Welcome in, ladies and gents. This is the 2025 season one review of Paradise on Disney Plus, or if you got the Hulu, Disney Plus, Max bundle, either way, this is that review for that show. And so, essentially, I can't believe uh, how gripping this story is in this tight, condensed 8 episodes. It's not a story that I haven't necessarily seen in some iteration before because obviously there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to a lot of these different stories. So, but anyway, essentially, it reminds me of the series that I watched. I believe it is Under the Dome that came out, I think, on CBS or NBC, maybe. I think it was CBS. Came out like 2014 or something like that. Anyway, it kind of reminds me of that. So basically, you have Sterling K. Brown character who is, I believe his name is Xavier Collins, and it also has Jane Marston, Mister the underused Cyclops in the X-Men series, and obviously in the Sonic series as well, Sonic movies, and so and that's also featuring Julian Nicholson. She has one of those faces with those performers where you like, I've seen you on other things, but I don't remember. But you have a distinct face and you have a distinct type of way in which you perform that is definitely obviously reminiscing or is captivating. Where I can recall you in some portion. She's playing Sinatra or Samantha in this series, and so essentially we see that the whole world that went to shit is destroyed. Everything for the most part is done, and we don't know why exactly. There's some natural disaster that happens. I believe something to do with uh, an iceberg that melted and caused a big ripple effect throughout the rest of the world. Or I think it was a volcano or something erupted or something like that. So yes, that is a spoiler. So for all you guys who don't want this series to be spoiled, I'll put it in the title that it is a spoiler, so you guys don't have to continue to watch this video. But I will essentially be spoiling the rest of this series because yeah, it's 8 episodes, so I have a nice memory bank of most of the things that happen throughout the series. So yeah, I'll be spoiling pretty much everything. So this is your warning if you don't want nothing that's spoiled. So essentially, we see Xavier with the first episode with them basically um, showing him just you think is in this like just regular suburban day era because essentially I just heard about this show from like word of mouth. I didn't know exactly what it was based on. And so I'm thinking when he's doing the his little morning routine montage workout, and we see, I'm thinking, oh, he's just some suburban area that eventually I'm thinking this is the beginning of what eventually will happen with them having to go into the bunker series. But no, he's already in the bunker. But he's doing because they created this the way they create this bunker. I don't know how big it is, but essentially yeah, he's just in that bunker, and we see all these just him just living his life, and we see them in this suburban area. Him basically being the head of the president's security, the Secret Service security, and so we see that yeah, he's a man in his 40s that's really fit. Stellar K. Brown is in damn good shape in this movie. I mean, in this series, and he clearly take care of himself. But anyway, we see him doing that, and we see him just going to work on his average day while he's in this little suburban bunker little place, and we see that he goes there, goes to meet the president, or at least goes to tell the president to wake up. It's time to get through his morning routine, and yeah, the president is basically dead. So it's one of those murder mystery things where it's like, who did it? Why did they do it? And we see throughout this series, essentially, he does a peculiar thing, but you can see this man is very clever. That Xavier is a very intelligent person. While we see why he is the head of the security, and he has a high moral compass. And so instead of him just immediately call somebody, he like, okay, the way that this whole scene, the way that the president is like pretty much dead, the way he's dead, he just got like a big blunt force trauma to the head. instead of him just calling the people immediately, he kind of suspects that somebody that is close to the president may have had something to do with it. And so he doesn't call anybody up. He just tells his second in command, Billy, who is his like essentially his best friend. And we see him, he called him and tell him like, keep the perimeter closed, and he does his little investigations and things like that. And we see that a couple of things is missing from the president's safe. Here's one: we see the tablet that he usually keeps, which is a highly secured and obviously forbidden tablet for anybody else to have. It's a high priority uh, documents in there. So we see that's missing from his vote, and believe I forget it's something else that may be missing from his vote, but that is essentially the most important thing that's in there, that tab, because that has all the information, that has all the files and documents on what happened before the natural incident, the global incident, and what's happening after, and what's the protocols that they have in place for contingencies and so forth. And so we also see that Sinatra, or Samantha, she is pretty much the boss of the boss. So, because we know even in real life that a president is really just a front man for the people that's really in charge behind him. And so he's just a front man that they put out for us normies, us citizens of America, and just in any society in this world. And so, yeah, she is basically, that's why they call her Sonata. She basically one that got her hands in every cookie jar. She got the keys of every powerful person. And so we see that she's just this multi-billionaire. And then what they do in this series, they go like they show you the background of these characters and what led them to be who they are now. And with her character, we see like, man, I ain't gonna lie, it was kind of shocking to see like, man, but it still doesn't justify a lot of the stuff that she does throughout this series. But seeing her lose her child, essentially when she was hitting the pinnacle of her life, we see, her lose one of her kids. She only loses one though. She loses her son. But we see how much that affects her, how much grief and that grief and that trauma of losing a child, how much that affects a person, and how it totally changes their outlook on things. And so we see that that's one of the reasons why. We also figure out Xavier Collins doesn't have his wife anymore because she essentially is dead. And we see that's just him and his daughter and his son. And the daughter, because she's the oldest, she takes on that motherly role in some sense. And he and Xavier entrusts his daughter with that responsibility to take care of her little brother, which I can relate to in some regard. And so, nevertheless, we also see the doctor. I believe her name is Dr. Gabrielle. Um, and we see her being basically the psychologist for, or the therapist, the psychologist therapist for Samantha and Xavier as well. But she's basically there to help. She actually was a part of I guess you could say, the coalition of people that helped create this bunker. I forget the name of what this bunker name is, but essentially they call it Paradise. But what this show does is take you through, they show you things that happen in the present and why these things are happening in the present, and they also show you the past events of what led up to these present moments. And so we also see I guess you could say, the mistress of the president. I believe her name is um Nicole. Yeah, Nicole. She is essentially um his mistress, but she's also like I don't know what organization she may be also a part of the Secret Service, but they don't make it that apparent that she is. I think she's also just essentially part of just some other US government branch that she's a part of, but they kind of consolidated her into the Secret Service. But either way, she's like supposed to be sleeping with the president as well, because the president, his name was Cal Bradford. He's married, but him and his wife are pretty essentially separated, and they live in separate houses. So she lives with Cal's son, and Cal is just there in that big mansion by him. Well, he's not in the mansion by himself. He's there with his father. His father is a successful businessman. So essentially, Cal Bradford, like I said, he resembles uh a current president that we know today. Well, you know, this person gets into office, but they already inherited all this. Unlike the current president of the United States, this president and Cal Buffer, he inherited a lot of that, and he didn't do nothing else with it. Unlike the president that we know, who inevitably becomes a successful businessman. But either way, Kyle Bradford is there with his father, who is also a wealthy, very rich man. But we also see that he also is struggling with dementia, and so we see how that comes into play throughout the rest of this series. And essentially, these episodes just go, they break down past events that led up to the current situation, because we see that also I believe her name is Jane. She is essentially Billy's little girlfriend that he has. She also works a part of the Secret Service, so she's like the newbie in the group. And so we just see the different scenarios that play out throughout this series, and we see how certain characters are, who they seem to be. You know, you think one character because they seem like they're fresh and they're wet behind the ears. We also see that they have also more to them than what meets the eye. We see, you know, certain people. I don't want to spoil everything, even though I did say this is going to be a spoiler-filled show. I don't want to spoil everything, so I want some of these mysteries to unravel. But this is a long-winded video already for me, so nevertheless, we see just, yeah, what happens, what leads up to the events that inevitably conclude at the end of this season, with them also finding out that the world that they thought they left behind, that is they thought is essentially dead, is not, because I'll give you one major spoiler for the end of the series. The president actually finds out that there is life outside still, because the president, Cal Bradford, did not press the nuclear button, because it's too when they have the football, we call it the button to end all things, essentially, because the US has a, or at least in this show, they have a button that essentially can unleash all the nuclear weapons that the US has at their disposal and just bomb every country that they have obviously beef with. And they also have another button. So they have the red button, which is the button of doom, and then they have the button of, I guess you could say, rebirth or rehabilitation or peace. So it's not really peace, but it's the rebirth button. So that's the blue button. The blue button is the rebirth button. And essentially, Cal Bradford, we find out in episode 7, he uses that button to pretty much use EMP that just pretty much wipes out all electricity. So that way, no nukes are able to go off, and that way the world is just not just consumed by all this nuclear waste and radiation. So instead of that, he decided to press the EMP button instead of just causing nuclear holocaust, basically. He decided to press that blue button, and so there's still a lot of viable life out there. Even though a lot of people died because of the global disaster, like probably in the billions, there's probably most likely still hundreds of thousands of people out there, maybe even a few million out there, that's still alive, that's still left. And we see Sinatra, because she was the main reason why this bunker in this Colorado cave, which is interesting, this is Colorado. Nevertheless, we see she pretty much created this bunker in this cave, but she doesn't want anybody else to come into this population that's from the outside, because obviously, for one, she gets to control everything that goes in and out of that little 25,000 population that she has, and she gets to manage that, and she believes that they are the last viable people to help basically restart the world when she's ready to bring up people back out there. Because obviously, at some point, with 25,000 people, you know, a lot of procreation gonna be going on up in there, and so that's eventually they ain't gonna be able to keep up with that population. So eventually they're gonna have to go out. But she wants to be in charge of that. She wants to control that, as well as the like I said, the conglomerate of all the billionaires that support her and that's with her in that cave. They want to control as much of the power as possible. And one thing I would say I don't like about this series so far even though I think it's a really great series, the one the gripe I have is that we don't, unlike something like in Under the Dome, where you have the people who are, I guess you could say, in charge, who they focus on a lot. We don't get to see a lot of these side characters, or at least a lot of the other people's lives that's also within this paradise bunker. We don't see their perspective on how they feel about certain things. It's more so just focusing on the people that's in charge, the people that make our decisions, which I understand is an essential part to this story, because you want to know, like, the people that's actually in charge of this stuff. You want to know how they are managing the situation. So I don't have a necessarily problem with how they decided to take that route, but I would have wanted to see just a little bit more of the side character stories and the other people within the bunker, and see how their lives is being affected by everything that's going on. Because the show, because it's on 8 episodes, they kind of rush through a lot of scenarios as we get towards the end of the series of the season, because they obviously want to wrap up a lot of the past events that led up to the present circumstances that's going on. And so, yeah, essentially, this is a great show. Like I said, even though I spoiled some things, I didn't want to spoil everything. So I don't want to spoil all the revelations and talk about all the revelations that unfolded. But yes, this is a great series, a really great series. I think you guys should check this out. I would give it personally like a 8.5 out of 10. So thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.